Ми на першому поверсі живемо, двері в під'їзд просто постійно вони відкривалися і закривалися, тому що люди тікали просто. Було дуже гучно, це одна з найгучніших ночей, тому що це дуже близько до нас, десь 5 хвилин йти пішки. Дуже страшно просто.
Спали і будинок здригнувся. Це було 1:30 ночі. Ну і вночі це так. Цей загорівся квартира, дах на 12-му поверсі. Вікна повилітали, ось дивіться, вікна ось тут вилетіли всі, у людей вікна повилітали. Ну не всі, не у всіх. В общем, був кошмар.
Блоки аж повідлітали. Не удивительно.
Та ж це вообще пиздець, ну.
Ну, дід казав, тільки в складі було 300 тонн цементу. І це каже, як їбало.
Давай ще нижче до самого цього, до самого болота. Щоб
Вон
було...
РПГ-7 торчить, блядь, так що туди низько теж не ходи. Дивись під ноги. РПГ-7 воно в калюжі. Кінцевиком вверх.
Де ти його бачиш? А, да. Сірий. Дивись тут, о, показую. Ось тако прямо дивись. Ближче до нас.
Зарятано прямо
Бачиш?
в болоті.
Да, з колпачком.
Між двома бугорками дивись. Да.
Їбало на мене, каже.
Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, May 5th, 2025, Missile Monday, and I have this article from AP News, and it reads, Putin says he hopes there will be no need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord, and this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it reads, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine had not arisen and that he hopes it will not. In comments aired Sunday in a film by Russian state television about his quarter of a century in power, Putin said Russia has the strength and the means to bring the conflict in Ukraine to a logical conclusion. Responding to a question about Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory, Putin said there has been no need to use those nuclear weapons, and I hope they will not be required. Now, excuse me, Slaki, before I continue, I just want to say that, Russia using nuclear weapons against Ukraine would be detrimental because honestly, that Russia essentially would be attacking itself, which is not going to happen. But we clearly see that Russia has the most powerful, or Russia possesses the most powerful nuclear missiles on Earth right now, which would be the Sarmat 2, or also known as the Satan 2 missiles, and indeed they're extremely powerful. And even if they didn't use that one still, if they were to send, a nuke to Ukraine, then not only will Ukraine, you know, be damaged, but also, you know, there will be casualties in Russia as well because Ukraine borders Russia, you know, because Ukraine actually is a part of Russia, the landmass, you know. But again, essentially it will be attacking itself. But from the retaliation that took place in Ukraine, you know, a couple of months ago when Russia sent, you know, a missile over there, man, and left a huge crater in the ground, you know, Zelensky, you know, he should have waved the white flag, you know, in my opinion, you know, because again, Russia, they're not effing around, man, you know, and it's evident, you know, and Putin is the right guy that's, you know, leading, you know, the Russian regime that is going to help, you know, bring in World War III, you know, because again, man, he's not playing, you know, but he's saying he hope he doesn't have to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, you know, but again, he will if he has to, you know. But, you know, this goes to show you the time that we're in, man. We're in a time of war, you know, and our people are still out here lost, you know, doing what they do, you know, BSing around. But again, man, this is real, man. You know, these are two, you know, nations, even though they're European nations, so-called European, because Russia is actually a part of Asia, you know. But and we're in a time of war, man, and things are heating up, you know, because even not just things in Russia, Ukraine, you know, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but you still have, you know, those small hats over there, you know, at war with the Ishmaelites, you know, the so-called Arabs, you know. We're in a time of war right now, man. Things are heating up and things are going to continue to heat up, man, until ultimately, you know, all hell breaks loose. So I'm going to just read Slakia. Let's read a little bit more. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I'll link it in the description. It says, we have enough strength and means to bring what was started in 2022 to a logical conclusion with the outcome Russia requires, he said. Putin signed a revamped version of Russia's nuclear doctrine in November 2024, spelling out the circumstances that now allow him to use Moscow's atomic arsenal, the world's largest, because again, you have to keep in mind that Russia possesses the most nuclear weapons, you know, over 5,000, you know, then a close second is America, and that's biblical prophecy in itself. Continuing on, it says that version lowered the bar, giving him the option, it's like giving him that option in response to even a conventional attack backed by a nuclear power. In the film, Putin also said Russia did not launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, what he called a special military operation in 2014, when it illegally annexed Crimea, because it was practically unrealistic. The country was not ready for such a frontal confrontation with the entire collective West. He said. He claimed also that Russia sincerely sought to solve the problem of Donbass by peaceful means. Putin said that the reconciliation with Ukraine was inevitable. So again, man, you know, they're trying to pretty much end it because in reality, we know, or those of us that are in the know, we know that if it was like truly, which they are at war, but if Russia wanted to end that conflict with Ukraine, it would have ended the same day, man. You know, because all they had to do was just send one nuke over there and do the same thing America did, you know, to Japan, you know, in 1945, man. So all they had to do was just nuke them into submission, you know. But again, obviously, you know, it's something much more, you know, something bigger that they're trying to accomplish. Obviously, you know, we know that Russia is going to be that main nation that is going to take down America, but we know on a much grander scale, our Lord Yahushai, along with the angels, are going to destroy this place, But again, just like I said, man, things are heating up. And I personally believe that Zelensky should have waved the white flag. Whatever Putin is trying to do with Ukraine, he should have just let him do it. Because obviously they're not going to stop until he gets what he wants. If he wants Ukraine, he's going to get it. And then, I did a little research, last night. And then, I went to ChatGPT and then I asked it, I said, when did Ukraine separate from Russia? And it said, Ukraine formally separated from the Soviet Union, which was led by Russia, on August 24th, 1991, when the Ukrainian parliament, Verkhovna Rada, declared independence following a failed coup in Moscow. This declaration was confirmed by a nationwide referendum on December 1st, 1991, in which over 90% of Ukrainian voters supported independence. Although Ukraine had been a part of the Soviet Union since 1922, it became an independent country with international recognition after the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. So, I clearly I asked it for, more information and it gave me more, which I'm not going to read the whole thing. But just to give a little bit of background, so it says early history. Ukraine has a long and complex history. Parts of it were under control of various powers over centuries. Poland, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, and eventually the Soviet Union. Modern Ukrainian national identity began to form in the 19th century, even under the imperial rule. So it said the Soviet period, which was, the Soviet Union was from 1922 to 1991. So roughly about 70 or 69 years. So it says, after a brief period of independence following World War I, Ukraine became one of the founding republics of the Soviet Union. In 1922, while it had nominal sovereignty as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and it was effectively controlled by Moscow. So Ukraine was a part of Russia, or it was controlled by Russia. Because as it said, in the early history, it was controlled by the Russian Empire. And again, it also mentioned that the Soviet Union was led by Russia, so Ukraine had been up under, Russian control for a while, before the Soviet Union collapsed, in 1991. So again, I guess, I'm not going to say I guess, but, Putin is trying to, regain control over Ukraine again, because again, pursuing to Ezekiel 38, like it says, the Lord is going to put hooks into their jaws, the jaws, talking about Russia, because the Lord is putting that old USSR spirit back on Russia, the United Soviet Socialist Republic, if, I got the other S right, but he's putting that old spirit back on Russia to become, that once, to go back to that old spirit, man, because Russia was a force to be reckoned with. And in this current time that we're in, man, Russia is the weapons that they produce, or that they produce, but the weapons that they pretty much have, man, in stock, they're going to destroy this place. They're going to take America out, man. Again, Russia, out of all the now 10 nuclear armed nations, Russia possesses the most nuclear missiles, i.e., or warheads in particular. Then a close second is the United States, Babylon, you know, these two nations are going to go to war with each other, you know. But I'm just quoting a couple of scriptures, you know, before I actually bring out the scripts. But, you know, again, we still have to pay attention to what's going on over there in the Holy Land as well, man. Because right now you have wildfires going on over there, you know, and then I think, you know, those Ishmaelites, you know, may have attacked them again. So again, there's still a lot going on over there, man. Because as it says in the scriptures, the Lord is going to have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So he's over there effing all small hats up, man. And they deserve it because they're not his people, you know. Though they proclaim to be Jews, they're not the real Jews, you know. So I'm just going to get the scripts, man. Don't want to make this one too long. So I'm going to start with the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, and verse 5. And it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." And indeed, man, you know, this is not going to be a traditional war, you know, because as we know, this current war is going to be fought with this nuclear technology, man. You know, because traditional war was hand-to-hand combat, you know, guerrilla warfare, if you will, man. Men, you know, wielding weapons of war, Slakia, such as, you know, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, things of that sort, you know, and charging each other on a battlefield, you know. But this war is going to primarily be fought with nuclear technology, because I always have to make mention that you are going to have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, but this war is primarily going to be fought with these missiles, man. That's that burning and fuel of fire, you know. So now I'm going to jump to Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 16, and it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and then bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy and right, man." The modern smith, you know, being these scientists and physicists that are behind developing and creating these nuclear weapons, man. These weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, you know. Because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons of war, man. And that's what these scientists and physicists are doing. They're making weapons of war. You know, and since I mentioned it, I'll grab it. Ezekiel 38, and I'll start at verse 1. And it says, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal," which the word Russia in the Hebrew means chief prince, you know, Ra'ash Shar, you know. It says, "The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back, and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them." So right, man, you know, in the midst of World War III, or even before, you know, World War III officially kicks off, man, Russia is going to be a guard unto these different Arab nations and, you know, Elam and Hamite nations, man, because it just named a couple. You know, Persia, which the Persians, the modern day Persians, would be, you know, so-called East Indians, you know, the Elamites, you know, Ethiopia, you know, which would be Ham, you know, Cush, you know, Libya. Again, man, Russia's going to be a guard to these nations, meaning they're going to protect them, in the midst of war. But even Russia, is going to be taken down as well, but the primary target is going to be America, aka Babylon the Great, which is going to be destroyed, man, So I'm going to come back to Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to give verse 4. And it says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. So right, man. Again, these missiles are going to come from far country, man. Meaning they're going to be shot from one end of the earth and land on the other side, man. Because it says the weapons of the Lord's indignation. Because as we know, Esau's blessing is the sword, but ultimately, these are the Lord's weapons, man. These are the Lord's weapons. They're the weapons of his righteous anger, which he is going to pour out upon this place, Babylon the Great, and this, and those that receive the mark of the beast, everyone is going to, everyone that receives the mark of the beast is going to feel, the full force of the Lord's anger, man. Because as it says, to destroy the whole land, the entire landmass of America is going to be destroyed. It's going to be completely desolate. So again, didn't want to make this too long, and I'll end it, real quick with Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And we're seeing that, man. That second war being World War II, which ended in 1945, but guess what? The third war, which will be World War III, is coming quickly, man. We don't know the day or hour when it's going to take place, but we know that it's inevitable. It's going to happen, and the destiny of this place, America, aka Babylon the Great, is going to be fulfilled, which is to be destroyed utterly, pursuant to Isaiah chapter 34, which gives a vivid description of how America is going to look after this destruction takes place. So ended with this. There's the book of Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15. And it says, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And right, man, there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place, man. The Lord has it already set to when he wants this to take place, and when that day comes, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop it, And it says to slay the third part of men, because you have three classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which are the biblical Israelites, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are the heathen nations, and you have the sons of the wicked, which are the Edomites, the so-called white man or white nations, or white nations, because again, or nation as a whole, but, you have these different, Edomite, nations, European Edomites and American Edomites, they're all the same, But again, that's primarily who the destruction is for, Esau, and 2/3 of our people are going to get caught up in this destruction. And whatever heathens are over here, they haven't returned to their homeland, right before this destruction take place, they're just collateral damage. They're just over here to make their little money and be destroyed. They're not important. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say Shalom.